Okay, I think I'll kick us off. So, welcome everybody. Really glad to see you all here at this research roundtable event. My name's Alex. I'm based at Tufts University, and I help lead the A&H Academy Research Communities Initiative, along with Nola Jenkins and Will Masters, who are also on the call. We have a really great um, topic presented by Martin about the effect of food costs and dietary diversity. If you had a chance to read the preprint or see his poster at A&H Academy Week, I hope this is super interesting for you. Um, and I see a few familiar names and faces that are on the call today, which is fantastic. So welcome back to those who are joining us again. But if you're here for the first time, I'll give you a brief introduction about, what research communities are all about and what these kind of events are meant to do. And I also invite you to introduce yourself using the chat box. So you can say your name, what country you're from, and the organization that you work with as well. And if your internet connection's good, you can turn on your camera as well so we can see more people who are on the call. So for those of you who are new to research communities, I'll share a bit of background now. These research roundtable events allow community members like Martin or any of you on the call to share your research and have a conversation with the people who join about your successes, your setbacks, learnings, and any goals you have in your research. Anybody can present, and we encourage people to use these sessions to share new findings or emerging research, even if it's not published or complete yet. We have very few requirements to present. We just ask that you have a clear goal and offer a short description of your topic, and then you save a half of your presentation for discussion, and then you'll see what that discussion is like today later. Our past presenters have shared their experiences from many countries across sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, including Ghana, Nigeria, Pakistan, Uganda, Vietnam, many more. Also shared their work looking at the global level of analysis across many countries from international organizations or universities. And all of this work has been connected to the accessibility, affordability, and demand for healthy food. And if you'd like to present at a future event or write a blog or share anything else about your work, you can email us at the email that Nola posted in the chat, researchcommunities@tufts.edu. And after the event's over today, there'll be a brief pop-up survey where you can do the same thing and also provide your feedback about the event. So today's session will be chaired by Martin Chegere about the effect of food costs on dietary diversity, looking at insights from rural and urban households in Tanzania. We're really excited to have Martin here and really excited to have a conversation with you all once he's shared his work. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Martin for his presentation. Thanks again, Martin, for being here.
All right. Thank you, Alex, and thank you everyone who has joined this session. So I'm going to present this work. It's titled as The Effect of Food Costs on Dietary Diversity, Insights from Rural and Urban Households in Tanzania. And together I'm with Doris Macha from the University of Dar es Salaam, just like me, and Adeline Muno from the Tanzania Food and Nutrition Center. So this will be the outline of our presentation. So go through the introduction and look at the objectives of this study, a brief of the literature in which this work is situated, and then we present the methodology which we used, and then the results and the policy implication. So as is well known, food is vital for human survival, but also the well-being. And it has been shown to influence the important health outcomes and the general quality of life. But on the other hand, we have the food price changes, which in some way impact the decisions which are made by consumers in terms of the diets which they choose. And this is mostly an important issue to low income households. which in most cases find themselves shifting towards less nutritious options, which tend to be cheaper when the prices of foods are high. So in our context of Tanzania, where this study was conducted, malnutrition is high. 34% of the children under 5 are stunted, but also almost 15% and 7% of women are underweight. But we also have another problem on the other side of overweighted obesity, all this coming from consumption of unhealthy diets. And data shows that about 32% of women are overweight or obese. But we also observe micronutrient deficiencies, which are also high in terms of prevalence, especially among children and women who are in the child-giving age. So if we look at this, the topic which we're looking at, the effect of food prices, we can examine this from two perspectives. The first one is the effect of the changes in price levels on food production and consumption. And in this case, we say that if food prices increase, then this would increase the supply, the future production, as people will be attracted to these high prices. But then this would also, in some way also increase the food cost because the prices are high, which on the other hand will mean that there will be less economic access to foods, and especially health foods. But you could also look at this from another angle, and especially in developing countries or in low-income households, where decisions on food or on what to consume vis-a-vis also other budgetary needs of the households. And this we can look from the inter-household bargaining power, which is is gendered in most of the developing countries. So, for example, what to produce, what to purchase, and all this could then be impacted from the fact that the kind of decisions which would be made probably by male and female members of the households are different. And in most cases, when you're speaking of developing countries, where in most cases women are the ones who are making most of the decisions when it comes to what is being consumed within the households, what to cook. But on the other hand, they don't own resources. So which means that what they would probably prefer to be part of the diets might not be attained because they don't have resources to meet those needs. So there is a discrepancy then between those who are making decisions and those who own resources. And that's why then in this work, we have these three objectives. One is to look at the access and affordability of diversified health diets in Tanzania. Also analyze the impact of this price and food cost on dietary choices. And then assess how these inter-household gender decision are making. And in this case, we will be focusing on production decisions and how these affect consumption of nutritious foods. Now situating this in the literature, we look at three theories here: the consumer theory, behavior theory, and inter-household bargaining theories. In the consumer theory here, we talk about the price elasticity of food. In this, from the economics, means that if food prices are increasing, then the prices of other goods which are competing with foods will be relatively cheaper. But also there is an income effect in that case where now you have less purchasing power because the prices has increased, and with the same amount of income, you purchase less of that good. So in that case, it means that if the prices of foods increase, then we are expecting that there will be less consumption of foods. And especially when these prices of foods are affecting mostly those foods which are nutritious. From the behavioral theory, these food choices are also influenced by perceptions, habits, and the normal social norms within the communities, including also the gender roles and the cultural values. So on one hand, it could be that, people are used to consuming certain types of foods, and it's difficult to change them from that consumption. or that if prices are high, then they will obviously jump with certain types of foods because of the normal habits which they have. But there could also be differences between the gender-specific expectations, but also the dietary preferences, which could also lead in the differences between how men and women also reacted to prices. From the inter-household bargaining theory, we could look at this from the collective models vis-a-vis the non-cooperative models, where our household members are making, joint decisions vis-a-vis when, one gender group is making decisions without cooperating with the other one. And as I already explained, this could also lead into the differences between the decision, who is making decisions, what kind of decisions they're making, and who really own the resources, which will then be channeled towards access of the food. Now, empirically, other studies have also been conducted around this area, and it has been shown that nutritious foods are often more expensive, which create, the difficulties in accessing health foods, especially when it comes to low income households. And in most cases, it has been shown that when prices increase, people normally replace those nutrient-dense foods with cheaper and less nutritious foods during these times when prices are high. But on the other hand, we have also explored some of literature which shows that the role of women when it comes to making decisions within the households, and how, if their financial autonomy is enhanced, this could promote consumption of health foods within households, but also promote gender equity in terms of decision making. Now, to be able to analyze the objectives which we have, we use the secondary data from the Tanzania National Panel Survey. The advantages of using this survey is that first, it's a nationwide data set, but it also contains the information which would help us, conduct the analysis which we wanted. So it collects information from the consumption of 59 food items, but it also has questions on the prices of foods from at which people consumed, purchased these foods, if the food they consumed was purchased. But it also gives that advantage of being, a panel. Now we use these two last webs because these use a different sampling framework from the 2012 census of Tanzania, which is different from the first three webs, which use a different sampling frame. So there is really a small proportion from the first three webs, which will also be captured in the subsequent two webs. So that's why we chose to just remain on these two. Now, in these webs, the total number of households in the fourth web was 3,352. 2,872 are from Tanzania mainland, and then the rest were from Zanzibar. But in Web 5, those were successfully resurveyed were 3,042, which is an attrition rate of about 9.2. And over this 6 years, we could say that this is not that much high. But eventually, we conducted this study focusing only on 2,585 households from the mainland, because we were guided in this study by using the dietary guideline, which is developed only for Tanzania mainland. We have one for Zanzibar, and actually it's different. But also, this enabled us to get the households which contained all the information from the households, and that's why we have, again, a slight decrease in the number of observations. But we also included other control variables as much as we could get from this data. Now, the main outcome variables in this case were three, or in groups of three, I would say. So the first one is the food-based dietary guidelines for the Tanzania mainland, as I mentioned. And this measures the number of food groups which are consumed in a week. And these groups were divided into 6 as per the guidelines. So the cereals and starchy foods in one group, vegetables, fruits, pulses and nuts, and then animal sources, foods, and healthy fats. Now we did this in 2 ways. So first were the variables which had the count of groups consumed within a week. But we also had another variable which captured the frequency of the frequency of consumption within a week. And the other one was, sorry, so the other one was simply a binary, whether this was consumed or not consumed. But then we also thought that it would also be good that we include other measures which have been globally used, like the food consumption score. And the advantage of this is that it attaches different weights to these different food groups. So I believe that the food consumption score should be familiar to most of you with the different weights, which I'm not going to mention. Sorry. Right. And then we also used another common measure, which is the household dietary diversity score, which is the data which allowed us to divide the consumption into 12 groups. So in that case, it means this score will range from 0 up to 12. And for the food consumption score, the variable range from 0 to 112. 112 if all these food groups were consumed within the 7 days. Now, for the main outcome variables, we constructed the food group price index, and we created this using the data from the National Panel Survey on food quantities and spending. So what we did is to find the prices of popular food items within each of the 6 food groups which we have as per the dietary guideline. And we weighted those prices using the amounts which are consumed by these households. And then as I said, we got the prices from the purchase of foods by the households. But for those which did not purchase foods, what we did is to obtain the median prices from the local market prices, because there is also data from the community level. So we had the prices obtained from these communities, and we use them as proxies for the prices of foods for those households which did not purchase their food. And then we calculated the cost of a balanced diet plate, and the cost of this health diet was weighted by using the weights which were provided by the dietary guidelines, which is 580 grams for starches, 155 for animal source foods, and the rest as they are indicated. And then after attaching these weights, then we are able to measure the cost of that health diet for an individual or an adult equivalent. And then we multiply this for all the adult equivalents within a household to get the total cost of consuming a health diet within a household in a day. And then we add another variable, which is the intra-household bargaining power and decision making. These were simply the categorical variables, which was on who made decisions on what to plant. And we are categorized on whether the decisions were made by the male spouse, female spouse, or jointly, or any other person who is not falling among male or female households. And then we had other control variables like education level of the head of household, the sex of the head of house, their age, marital status, household size, and their location. Great. So in terms of the analysis, so for the first objective, what we did was to simply evaluate the consumption patterns, the dietary diversity, and also compare with the affordability. So after measuring the cost of a health diet, then we multiplied by the number of the members of the households, and then multiplied by 28 days. And then we are able to see like how much would it cost for a household to consume a health diet a day. And then we compare this with the total expenditures, with the expenditures on foods which they have, but also with the expenditure of foods outside their own houses, just to be able to compare with how much they're spending currently with what would have required them to spend if they were to consume a health diet. And then for the second objectives, in this case, we applied the econometric analysis. So we had in our equation as the outcome variables as I described, the diversity and the food consumption score, as well as meeting the dietary guidelines. So these were the outcome variables, and these were regressed against the cost of the health diet, which the household experienced. But we also looked at how these prices of different food groups individually would also affect the consumption of the individual food group. So for example, like how the price of cereals and starch affect the consumption of starch. So basically it's like, finding the elasticities. Now, from the fact that we have the panel data, so we employ the panel data models. So we thought of fixed effect, random effect, and the correlated random effect model. We know the random effect has very restrictive assumptions, which is to assume that there is no correlation between the unobserved heterogeneity and covariates. But then the fixed effects that doesn't rely on that assumption. But unfortunately, fixed effects doesn't work well when you have time invariant variables, and also the incidental parameter problems when you have outcome variables, which are limited in nature. So we also use the correlated random effects as our main econometric analysis, the main model, but we also have as robustness checks the fixed effect. The goodness of correlated random effects that it integrates the time averages to address the potential correlation, which the random effects cannot address in that way. But there are also still other time variant heterogeneities which we really don't solve in this case. So basically, our results kind of would say that they're showing correlations instead of causality. So quickly into the results. So this is what we see in terms of the consumption of food groups in a household. Mostly households consume cereals and starches almost every day, as well as the vegetables. But more importantly, you see the consumption of animal source foods is small, the pulses and the fruits as well. But more importantly, we see is that compared to the fourth wave in 2014 and that fifth wave in 2020, the consumption of animal source foods has dropped from an average of 4 to an average of 3. And the good thing is we had also other kind of qualitative questions within the households, which were asking whether all households eat roughly the same kind of diet. And in most of the households, this was true. But there is a bit of, for those who are not consuming the same kind of diets, we would see that it's mainly among men and women and not the children. In terms of affordability, the main cost of a health diet per plate per annum was around 900,000 Tanzanian shillings. This is about $400 US per person. And if we find the ratio of this to the cost of food which is consumed within the households, we find that this amount is almost twice that amount. So somehow it indicates that the cost of a balanced of a health food is high relative to the amount which the household spends. But even when we include the total food cost, so cost which is consumed outside, plus that food which is consumed outside, we see that the ratio is also still higher than one. But it has also even increased when it comes to 2020 compared to 2014-15. And if we compare this amount to the total household expenditures, so including expenditures, for example, in education, health, and so on, we find that actually the total amount of expenditure, if it were to go into consumption of health foods, then it means that it will exhaust the entire amount which the households spend, even on other things. So somehow it indicates that affordability is really an issue, and households are facing financial constraints. But if we dig deeper, we see that about 67% of the households, the cost of a balanced diet exceeds their food budgets. So which means there are so many households which are affected if we don't just look at the averages. And also about 40%, if they utilize their entire expenditures, they will not be able to afford the cost of a health diet in their own communities. Now, this, and for the sake of time, I'm not going to go much through this household summary statistics. But what we quickly see is that if we look at the numbers, they look very good. The food-based dietary guidelines show that on average they consume 5 of the 6 groups. But as we have seen, these groups are actually mostly cereals, vegetables, and so on. But there are some groups which, as we have seen, are not that much consumed, like the animal sources and fruits. Right. So let me quickly jump into the regression results in this case. So here, the table shows us the marginal effects of the cost of a health diet on household dietary diversity. First measured as the guidelines, and then as the food consumption score, and then the household dietary diversity. If we look at this first row, we see that the cost of a health diet has a negative effect on attaining the dietary guidelines. So consuming those 6 food groups within a week. But that effect is not that much, it's not significant when we consider the food consumption score and the household dietary diversity scores. If we look at the other control variables, actually, we see, and as we expect, the level of expenditure, which would indicate the affluence of the households, the sizes of the households, which would indicate the diversity in terms of preferences among the household members, and involvement in agriculture, all these increasing the dietary diversities. But you also see that those who are in the urban areas also tend to consume more diversified foods compared to those in the rural areas. And if we look at the cost of this health diet plate and how it affects the different food groups specifically, we see that it actually leads into the increase in consumption of starches and cereals, so which then resolves well with the previous studies that when food prices are increasing, then people tend to consume less, shift to consumption of less nutritious food. In this case, consuming more starches and cereals. But then we don't see significant effect on other variables, but we see at least negatively affecting the consumption of foods, but negative but not significant in the consumption of animal source foods. So, well, we also looked at the prices of the average prices of different food groups and how these affect the consumption of the respective food group and the other food groups. Of course, there are mixed stories here, but more importantly, what we see is that the consumption of the prices of foods would affect possibly the consumption of starches but it will lower the consumption of foods. This would make sense. Now, we also then analyze how different decision making within the households affect dietary diversity. And here we have the base group as the male spouse making decisions in planting. And what we see is that when a female spouse or when the joint decision making are made or other members within the households are making decisions, then the households tend to consume more diversified foods compared to when male spouses are making these decisions. To us, more important is that joint planting decisions have this strong positive effect on dietary diversity. Now, we wanted to explore more in general whether these food prices would affect more rural or urban areas. And what we see is that when the cost of health diet plate increases, it affects more the rural areas compared to the urban areas. Now this story here could be a bit perplexing because most of the production is actually taking place in the rural areas. In the urban areas, they just receive from the rural areas. But here, our implication here would be that when prices are high, probably the rural areas tend to sell those foods more to the urban areas because now they are able to get more prices. But the proceeds or the income they get from that purchases is not directed towards diversifying their own foods. It is probably directed into consumption of other things within the houses. Now, the urban areas are probably not facing that because they get a lot of supplies there. And it could be that they also have more people with incomes, more access, so they don't experience that much. Right. Now, for the sake of time, I will skip these robustness checks. But what we did basically is to redefine, as I said, the household dietary diversity score into the most important groups. So instead of 12, we had 9 groups, as we explained for those who have read the paper. But we also included the frequencies in consumption of those 6 groups as they are mentioned in the dietary guidelines. And we see the kind of the same pattern of results as the previous ones. But we also presented the other, as I said, the fixed effect model. And we see that the results are also still similar to those which we obtained. So quickly to policy implications, given the kind of results we have obtained, policy implications rise on first targeting the rural food environment in general. And this could be in terms of infrastructures, the systems, the education, and also access to diversified and nutritious foods. Even once the prices are high, not everything should be shifted to other areas. And this, as I said, should go hand in hand with the nutrition sensitive education. But we also recommend the expansion of nutrition sensitive social protection, for example, food vouchers, school feeding, and this mainly tailored towards the really poor households. But also to integrate all these dietary diversity targets into agricultural and food markets in terms of diversity in production itself, but also those other factors which could be affecting the rural value chains, so like the investments, the kind of feedback supply, I would say, from the urban areas. But also monitoring, the cost trends using disaggregated and real-time data to be able to identify and predict when the worst outcomes would come. But also, there could be some targets in terms of subsidizing the nutrition food groups, which most of the time tend to be consumed in small amounts, like the animal sources, as we have seen. Thank you. So this is the end of my presentation, and I would very welcome your comments and questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Wonderful. Thanks, Martin. That was really great. Really appreciated you going into all that detail and just walking us through each part of the paper. And for folks on the call who haven't seen it yet, the details for both the preprint and then also the poster that Martin and colleagues presented at ANH Academy Week in Dar es Salaam is on our website, so you can see that. So now we have around 25 minutes for any questions, comments. You can share connections to your own work based on what you heard. And you're welcome to type those in the chat or use your microphone and come off mute. And I'll pause if there's any burning questions, but then I also have some things I'd like to ask, and I'm sure Will and others do too. So. Oh, great. So we have a question from Nishmeet, who's at the University of Edinburgh. She's asking if the Tanzanian food-based dietary guideline also includes discretionary foods, and if those are included or excluded from defining a balanced diet. She also says meals outside the home and processed food are rising in rural Tanzania. And if she's asking, do you think these foods are being substituted or displaced? So Nishmeet, we're happy to continue just with Martin answering your question from the chat, or if you're able to use your microphone, that's great too.
No, sure. I just put in the question. Hi, Martin, thank you for the presentation. I just put in the question just for clarity's sake. So if Martin wants to respond, thank you.
Well, no, I don't think that would really be the case that they're being substituted, and that's why we had to expand this analysis to include other global measures as well, like the food consumption score, the household data diversity, which captures 12 groups. So yes, there are those exclusions in the dietary guidelines. But the fact that we also included these other measures, then these are also captured. But also, the thing is, I would say while it excludes some of these foods, but most of them are actually still aggregated into these six. So I mean, the 12 classification is still better because it disaggregates more of these food groups. But on the other hand, the guidelines are also focusing on the kind of diversities which individuals have in terms of being able to recognize these differences, but also the ability to implement this diversity when it comes to consumption within households.
Sure, no, thank you. Just a quick clarification. So you're saying basically the guidelines, though they mention the discretionary foods, which are more like processed foods or recipe-based foods, right? I'm guessing. So then you're saying that those haven't been included, right? Just to make sure that I've understood this here. Those haven't been included in your analysis of a balanced diet, right? When you say like different measures are different, but like when you say a balanced diet, those foods have no place, right?
Well, so for us is we used the data from the 59 items which are commonly consumed foods within Tanzania. So had it been that we had collected our own data, probably I would have answered it differently. But for now, I would say that all that was available within the 59 food items was used in this analysis.
Sure, no worries. Thank you so much.
But I also have my co-authors here, so you could also chip in case of any clarifications and additions. Doris and Adam.
Hello, I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, on the control variables, so you had a variable on the level of education, then you have another one on the education of the household height. So I want to get the clarification in terms of the difference between the two variables, education, and I don't know which is which.
Yes, thanks. And sorry for what was there in the slide. I know that wasn't correct. So we have the education of the head of household, but we also included the level of education of the highest educated member within the household. So we thought that this would also be an important factor because you could be having a head of household who is not that much educated, but then you have other members who are well educated and they could have an influence within the household. So we have these two education variables, but one is for the head of household and another one is for another member. It could happen that within a household, that the highest educated member is the head of household. So this two would be the same for that. Yes.
Okay, I see.
I have a question about price analysis, if we could talk about that. So maybe you could go back to the slide with the correlations between price changes or diet cost food group changes, which is so interesting. And in particular, the extreme sensitivity of fruits was very striking about how the food environment really seems to affect how much fruit people are eating. I was very curious, like what you thought of that in the Tanzanian context. Do you think that's because of seasonality? Like these are high prices for fruits at times when they're out of season? Or is it regions? You know, in high price regions, the fruits are not being consumed. Do you think it's seasonality or regions or maybe both? As you travel around Tanzania, what do you see and think about the variation in the fruits in the diet? Because that seems like it could be very important for health and a big part of the story. Of course, the other parts are interesting too. I just wanted to start with that one.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Of course, in honest, what we thought is that this could be, the seasonality, that you have seasons when you don't have much of this, and most of our fruits are tropical fruits. So during the off seasons, the prices are high, and this would affect the consumptions. But I'll be honest that we haven't really broken this down into different regions. I think that's something we could also do. But I would also agree to that it could also be the differences across the regions which we have, because we even also have different regions with different agroclimatic conditions. So these could also be affected differently. So I take this as something that we could also explore further. Thank you.
Any other questions from someone who hasn't shared yet? You're welcome to join or to share them in the chat or with your microphone as well. And if not, I had a question for Martin actually. I noticed you got a lot of data from these national panel surveys, and one was during 2020 and 2021. And I'm curious, like, if there was any potential impact of just the timing of that survey being during the pandemic that may have changed any results, or if you thought about that at all. I know particularly with like food away from home, right? Like at least, you know, where I was living, it was just not super common. You would just eat at home and then not go to restaurants because they were closed. Just curious if that played a part at all in your thinking about this.
Yeah, that's also a possibility. But yeah, it could be because you know the pandemic affected the production systems, the supply systems, but also even the accessibility, as you say, people stay at home, probably the kind of reach of what kind of foods they could have. Yeah, one could attribute that. That's why we really didn't have to talk much about, you know, like this year being the worst compared to other things. So saying that the trend would continue being like that because of the pandemic. Yeah, but it's a good point.
If others don't have questions, another one is to talk about PASHFARM. So, Martin, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the broader context for this study, or maybe Maureen, you know, you would want to talk about this from a AERC perspective, or maybe others on the call have been part of different PASHFARM studies. But Martin, you could just begin with kind of what is PASHFARM to you? What else did you learn from being part of the PASHFARM workshops? You know, because we want to really, I think, highlight what was discovered through the PASHFARM project.
Right. So I'll talk a bit, but I think Maureen, because she's here, she can talk more about it. So this was a big project under African Economic Research Consortium, and it invited researchers from different parts of Africa, but all focusing on issues related to nutrition, gender, but also retails. Food retail. And through this forum, we had like, I think probably like 16 plus groups which have done research in different countries. We had some of the groups doing more than one work, for example, our own. So we were able to get funds, which enabled us to also go and collect primary data for another paper, which we have. And hopefully, if we get some time, we present it here. But the kind of things which we have really learned in this project is first the multidisciplinarity nature of the project itself, bringing people from different disciplines. As an economist myself, a nutritionist, gender experts, and all these people, you know, sharing different methodologies they have, different approaches they use, and which benefited all of us. But we also had the resource persons within the project who were kind of giving, you know, regular feedbacks to the papers which we were presenting time after time, and this were mainly to improve our own work, but also the peer learning, because we also had our own peer reviews of our own papers. But it has also exposed us to other forums outside the AERC, and I'll be honest myself that I knew ANH Academy via this project, and now I've become part of it and integrated through it. Not mentioning other advantages, which I know some of my group members have also obtained. Maybe they'll say themselves, Doris is here. Yeah, so briefly, that is what I would say about the PASHFARM, but I think others could also add. I know Doris is here, whom we co-authored this paper. I'm a project member. But yeah, sorry, one more thing is that we also got a forum to meet the policy makers and other stakeholders around the areas we were working with. So if you might recall, for those who were in the ANH conference in Dar es Salaam, we had a PASHFARM policy section. But outside that, we are also going to have another policy forum where we'll be presenting this work. And this has, brought us together with the policymakers and other stakeholders, be able to have, that direct impact, the kind of work which we're doing. Thank you. Maureen?
Maureen, we can hear you. Maureen, we can hear you.
Hello, Wheelmasters. Hi.
Hi.
Sorry,
you wanna-
can't speak. I can't speak now. I'm on transit. I'm in a loud place, yeah? Yes. But thank you so much for this opportunity for our researchers to present their work. And I think Martin has said that PASHFARM is a big project. We had 20 projects. And our researchers now are disseminating their work, and we are organizing policy workshops to disseminate. So sorry for this. If you need updates, I can always write an email about PASHFARM. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining from the car.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so I mean, Doris, you might want to
Doris
speak
is
to the
also
students.
here. Yeah. Doris, can you hear us?
Yeah.
No.
Can you hear me right now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry, I'm kind of in another meeting, so I had to step out. Yeah, so through the PASHFARM project, I was able to learn a lot of, first, it helped me with my capacity building in terms of research. I was able to advance my research skills through the papers that we did. And also I was able to learn a lot of nutrition and gender items and different multidisciplinary things. So the PASHFARM project has been very enriching by giving me different types of knowledge, and also I was able to learn to see different people's who I only saw on papers. So yeah, it gave me exposure to a lot of academic and non-academic things, which I think is very valuable. And I'd like to thank the ARC and the ANH for this opportunity for us to present our paper. Yeah, I think Adeline can add more on this. Thank you.
I don't know if others have other questions and comments, but one topic that's important to us is that the P in PASHFARM is policy, right? What should the government of Tanzania, what should NGOs in Tanzania, what should private enterprises, what should there be their policies, about this? And I feel like you mentioned some insights, but Martin, just to close out, we might have a little bit, just a few minutes of discussion about what this means really. You found a huge role for income, not a big role for prices, except in the case of fruits, because consumption is so low of these nutrient-rich food groups, it just doesn't, it's not statistically significant, except in the case of fruits where it seems to be seasonality and so forth. What else do you take away from this for policy, for the P in PASHFARM?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for pointing that out. I think, as I mentioned, there is a need to really integrate, these data diversity issues into, the agriculture, the food market policies, infrastructure, but more important, which we haven't really analyzed here, but which we think is important is the education, the nutrition sensitive education, on the importance of consuming healthy foods, but that could also be relative to the cost of not consuming the health foods. It is vivid in our countries now, the rising number of non-communicable diseases, in which they cost the government a lot. And we're investing a lot in curing instead of prevention. And one way we could save this cost would be to invest in nutrition sensitive education and make sure that people are consuming healthy foods in a healthy way. And then we could reap these benefits. There could be also, of course, other long-term issues, as you mentioned, issues related to income, right? So this this has to go hand in hand with how much people are earning, how much they should spend in foods vis-a-vis other equally, I would say, important needs which they have in households. So there is a role to play for everyone, the government, the civil societies, the NGOs, in that case, and especially in nutrition sensitive education. I don't know if Doris has anything to add on that.
I think also, just to add, I think maybe we should also consider the issue of gender when it comes to nutrition sensitive, nutrition sensitive education. Because in Tanzania, we do find that in some of the results that mostly women are the one knowledgeable on these issues, while men tend to lag behind. So maybe if we can have more policy implications by forcing men to get this education, maybe possibly, and as we know, most of the households here in Tanzania are headed by males, maybe the impact on nutrition by improving data diversity and overall food security will increase in Tanzania. Yeah, thank you.
And thanks for those thoughts, Doris and Martin. I think we're about at time. So I just want to thank everyone here for joining, for sharing, especially for Martin and the rest of the ARC team for presenting this work. As you can see, it's like super interesting and just so many connections, both the things other people are doing and then also super importantly, as Will pointed out, to policy, which is like super important in this next phase of ANH Academies. You want to explore how science can be integrated into policy decisions. And I think this work is a great example of how that can be done. A recording of this session will be posted to our website, and there will be many more of these roundtables to come in the coming weeks, and we'll have some exciting updates to share about this program as a whole as well. So stay tuned for those, and thanks again for joining. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the organizations.